morning, everyone.
Good morning.
So I am really excited to do this podcast today with our special guest, Nechama.
Hi.
Yes.
Thanks
Hi.
for having me.
Thanks for
It's so
coming.
nice to be here.
Yes, I'm really excited today to speak with Nechama, just because when I found out about the work that Nechama does, I was super impressed, especially like in my work in private practice. Like there's a common theme of what people are missing, and that is connection. And one of the things that Nechama does really, really well is provide connection to the frum community for both single women and married women. And unfortunately, we live in like the lonely pandemic where people are craving connection. And Nechama has come up with a community, an online-based community called This Is Realization. And I think that it is such a fabulous research, so much so that I've already recommended it to a bunch of people who have really enjoyed it. And what it is on that platform is just a way for young adults and adults to connect to one another, to people who are just similar to them, to get support. And I had the opportunity to actually like go on it and to watch a couple of things on there. And I really, really loved how real, how authentic it was, and also just how it was so positive. Generally, when there's a community for individuals, it has the potential for it to be negative.
Right.
And one of the things that I loved about it is that it was so inspirational and so positive. So I'm super excited to speak with Nechama today, and to see if she can give us some gems into her personal experiences, but also her professional experiences as a life coach.
Yes. Thank you so much for coming. And I think it's really great that you came this week, and we're going to talk about the topic of singlehood, and like really brave of you to come and like share some of your personal story, and we'll kind of fill in from like a mental health perspective of what that can be like for many people and the different like struggles and tips that we found that work for people.
Right. Yeah. I'm so happy to be here and thank you so much for having me. I'm very, very passionate about speaking about this topic. I got married at 27, so I did have some time in the dating world and just had a journey through my single life, and of course still now, but there's just plenty I want to share and normalize about being single and just how lonely it can be, and just I guess what got me through and what I try to provide to my clients, like through my coaching community and through my one-on-one services as well.
Yeah, that's great. And it's so important to talk about it because I just feel like this is not a topic that people talk about.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's talked about like at large as like
Yeah.
the shidduch crisis,
Mm-hmm.
or oh, what are we gonna do? Or but like
And also, like, how are
actual
you gonna read shidduchim to people and get them married?
Yeah,
And
the very
it's-
practical
yeah.
aspects of it, of like what do we do about this problem,
Right.
but not
Mhm.
like what do we do like
Mhm. And what does it
inside, like
feel-
what does it feel like, yeah, and what can we do to make people feel better through their experience of this.
Yeah, I
Mhm.
feel like when I was dating, like me and my friends, we would then discuss it, like what it was like, the real feelings. And there's a part of me that feels like a little funny to be talking about something that I'm not in, even though as a therapist, I'm always talking about things
Yeah.
that I'm not necessarily in. So I don't know why this feels different though.
Mhm.
It does, maybe because it's more, in my community and with my friends, or I remember my days when I was dating. So there is a part of me that, wants to be kind of mindful of the fact that like I'm not in this place anymore.
Yeah, and I really appreciate like that sensitivity, just because like sometimes like when we're out of something, we sort of forget about it, and we want to make sure like that we're talking about it from a place that's really going to help people, but also like that from a place that's like authentic. And like I know like if I'm, let's say, going through something and somebody else is speaking about it, but they're not personally in it at that moment, like I kind of feel like, oh, you don't get it. Like you don't really get it. Like come on, like you have to really be in it with me. And I don't want to like take that lightly, because there is like we're all sitting here, like thankfully we're all married.
Yeah.
And there is like a certain social status that I think like the community provides, like while being married.
Yes.
And so it's almost like we have to like acknowledge like the privilege, or I
Right.
don't know if privilege is even the wrong
That's the
word.
word that's coming to me.
Like,
Gratitude.
yeah.
Of like where it is that
Right.
that we are. But I think like if we're not speaking about it, then who is? And
Right.
so like maybe like therefore like we need to like find this time to really to talk about like what does it feel like to be a single woman in the community. What are some of the struggles that come up, both on personal levels and also like what we see in our clients, but also like from our own experiences of how it felt when we were single, whether it was single for 6 months, single
Yeah.
for 2 years, or single for 10 years, because that's something that is unfortunately very common.
Yeah, I think even on the flip side, even if we're not experiencing it right now, or even if someone never experienced it for like a long period of time, like you're saying, just giving a voice or making room for this conversation is what I would have needed when I was single. So I don't think of it so much as like I definitely get it's like sensitive and you don't want to be like, "Oh, I'm happily married and here we are talking about this topic
Exactly.
that you have to
Yeah.
deal with." It's more just like I'm feeling for you and I'm like wanting to give you the space to like tell me how you feel and to
Yeah.
give you that room because without that it's like we just almost are oblivious like everyone who's married it feels like when you're single everyone who's married is oblivious to what you have to deal with so the fact that we're not oblivious and the fact that I try to remember and show people that like I do remember what it was like. Yes,
Mhm.
I'm happily married now and I'm so grateful. It doesn't mean that I didn't go through what I went through. And like I do get it and I didn't forget about it and I totally can still feel for you. And just because I'm in a different place, it doesn't mean that like you have to put up this wall and say, "Oh, you don't get me anymore now." It's like I do get you and I'm here to
Mhm.
show you that like I do remember and I do get how challenging it can be and
Yeah.
just like bridge that gap.
It makes me think like I was, I guess blessed that I did get married right away. I was 21. I graduated high school at 17, but then I went to seminary for 2 years and then another 2 years. I was in seminary for 4 years, which is a lot. And I don't regret that just because I feel like it was like just the foundation of like my
I
Judaism and like my
so
connection.
relate. I've been in seminary for 3 years, three different ones,
Oh
three
wow.
different times. So like, and I know we have one seminary in common. So I definitely relate to that being a huge part of the growth and the
Yeah.
journey.
I have no
Yeah.
idea what you people are talking about. Okay. Moving on.
so so when I was dating though, I only dated for 2 years, and even though it was a short, considering like a short amount of time to be dating, it felt like the hardest life stage that I went through. And I know some people go through it probably much harder, and so I'm not trying to compare and contrast, but for me, like when I look back, I think it's hard for me to forget it. I can't forget it because of how difficult it was being in that life stage, and I think that many people can relate to that. Some of the common struggles that do come up being single, no matter what the time period is.
Yeah. Yeah. Whether it's for 6 months, like you're saying, or if it's for 5 years or 10 years, it's still, I think we all go through similar struggles. And then some of them, the fact that they last much longer become excruciating. And then
Hmm.
sometimes it's like kind of annoying that, that we're dealing with these things or comments from other people, but then it passes quickly. So I do think the time takes a toll. But at the same time, any being in that stage, like you're saying, is hard and has its things for
Hmm.
sure.
Yeah.
I think one of the reasons why it's so hard, right? One of the many reasons, but it's just so like not organic. You
Hmm.
come home from seminary, you finish high school, whenever the time is, it's like, okay, now we're starting to date. Like the way it is, and let's say our community, and it's very different in many different communities, but let's say in one of the Orthodox communities, it's very stringent. It's like very stre-
Contrived.
Hmm.
it's stressful and
Right.
tension and just
Yeah.
not
Natural.
organic. And I remember one of my friends telling me, she's like, I cannot meet a guy through the system. So she's like, was so scared she was going to be single forever. And
Mhm.
then she got married, and
Mhm.
she claimed that it wasn't that, because they dated twice. So you see, I couldn't go through the system. But the point is the system, it feels so, it's so tight. Like it's
Yeah.
not organic. It's not natural. It's like,
Hmm.
for
I
many
agree.
people, they may have not, really been dating boys beforehand, let alone talking to boys.
Mhm.
And
Hmm.
now you're doing something totally new through a weird system.
Yeah. I think it's like a very prescribed trajectory of this is what happens at this point in your life, and this is what happens next, and that's what happens next. And one of the difficult things is that we're not asking the individual person, are you ready? Like, are you even ready to date? Like, I know for myself, like, I was always asking myself that question of, I grew up, like, and my parents were divorced. And so one of the things I always said, like, I want to not just get married, like, I want to make sure I have a good marriage.
I want to stay
And so
married.
I want to stay married. I think, like, at that point, like, when I was dating, a book came out, I Only Want to Be Married Once.
Oh yeah, isn't that by Hannah Levitan?
Yes.
Yeah.
So that was like a very popular book, and it's a fabulous book. And I just remember just like flipping through and saying, like, asking myself the right questions of like, am I going to marry the right person? Like, let me know myself. Like, a lot of like searching just because like I wanted to do it right. And I think when we have a prescribed trajectory, there's almost no room for you to stop and think. There's no room for you to say like, wait, what am I like what type of person will match me well, what do I want for my future? And so I think some of that happens like in an accelerated fashion because it's like, okay, I have to like tell the shotgun what I'm looking for and describe myself in an elevator speech
Right.
as I'm like going to these like dating events. But like that deep, like there's no time for like that deep self-awareness of what's really going to work, because this is going to be the rest of my life.
When you're supposed to be telling, let's say, the shatanim what kind of guy you want and dating, it's still the time that you're figuring it out for yourselves as well. It's still that emerging
Right. You're
adulthood
figuring
Yeah.
it out
stage.
as you're doing it. But what's
Mhm.
interesting is that you can't really be expected we are expected to go through, like you're saying, this step by step process, and like at this age you do this, you come home from seminary, you start dating, then you get married, then you have a kid. It's like you can't even expect someone to do something that's out of their control. And
Yeah.
that's what's crazy to me.
Mhm.
It's like, and that's what I realized as I'm like, I'm 24, I'm 25, I'm 26, and I'm like, there is nothing I can do
Yeah.
to change my situation. There's literally nothing I can
But there
do.
is attitudes, like you're being too
Right. No, nothing
picky
about the
or
practical
right, but I'm saying
sense.
there's this
Yeah.
but then the kind of feelings that I remember getting from whether it was my family or the outside world was like, "You're not doing what you need to be doing." So even though what you're saying right
Right.
now, it's like completely out of control, the messages that are coming from society is that you're
Yeah.
not doing good enough.
Right.
You're being too
Right.
picky.
It's
You're
the
not skinny
illusion that you
enough.
should be doing something and you're
Right.
not supposed, and you
Mhm.
really, there's nothing, because you can be doing every single thing right, and there is nothing you can do to change your situation if this is what Hashem wants from you, and this is
Right.
the way that your journey is supposed to go. And so it's
Mhm.
like it was weird to me almost, like that people had these expectations, like
Yeah.
this is what you do. Let's, even with having kids, let's say someone can have a kid right away. I mean, like you can't have these expectations and these step-by-step process to life. It's never going to work for everyone, and it
Right.
just causes people so much pain to be
Mhm.
like, you have, this is what you're supposed to do, versus like, we want to get married and have children, have a family. That's a great moral goal of ours, but it's like, not like you can't have a timeline. You just have to do what's best for you and do your best and go through life and like let it happen. Like there's
Mhm.
nothing you can do to force a specific timeline.
Right. I really like that because it's almost like when it happens is completely out of our control, but it's almost like presented to us as if like if it didn't happen, it's because you didn't do it
Right.
properly. And so like
Right.
it is in our control in some extent, but then the reality is that it's not in our control. And I think like what happens is like a lot of times like women as they go through this, they kind of feel torn because it's like, wait, but I really want this, and I'm told that if I just daven a little bit more, or if I meet more shadchanim, or if I dress up at weddings, or if I, do things to like change how I'm dressing, or if I go on a diet, or if I get that surgery, right? And unfortunately, like it runs the gamut of how many
Yeah.
like things people will do because they want it so badly. But it's one of those things that it will come when it comes,
Yeah.
and that's not matched. And what happens a lot of times, what I see at least, is a lot of self blame of what
Mhm.
am I doing wrong, or what's
Mhm.
wrong with me as a human that I'm not attractive enough for somebody to pick me or to choose
That's
me or to
exactly
want
where I
me.
was just gonna go, because I was just gonna say, this is it. Like, I just want to scream it from the rooftops. Like, there's nothing wrong with you. There's
Right.
nothing wrong with you. You're
Yes.
amazing. You're doing great. You're doing everything right. You're right on track. And
Hmm.
for some reason, this is what Hashem wants you to experience. And you have to, of course, like, the attitude and the perspective and strengthen your amuna. I mean, there's so much that I've learned and gained in that time that I'm so grateful for looking back. But hindsight's 2020, and it's not the same as like when you're in it, and there's nothing wrong with you. That's literally what I want to tell people, because like you're saying, there's so much self-blame and there's so much like pain that comes from like feeling that I'm not doing good enough, like I'm not good enough, I'm not like everybody else, I'm not, for some reason, like I don't deserve what everyone else has, and that's just such a painful place to be.
Hmm. It's 100% inaccurate. Like, and I think
Yeah.
like, if there's like one thing we can like let people walk away with is if it's not happening for you right away, like it has nothing to do necessarily with what your efforts are at that point,
Yeah.
or there's nothing flawed about you. And I think the outcome of that is that people start feeling like they don't belong. They
Mhm.
feel like, I don't belong in this community because if the system isn't working for me, like if I am not getting married at 19, 20, 21, or, an older single at 22, right? If I'm not married at that, then maybe then I'm not going to catch up with my friends, and then there's no place for me. Like,
Yeah.
where do I belong? Like, who do I talk to? Like my married friends, I can't really relate to anymore if they're like, on to the
Yeah.
next stage, or maybe they've moved to Israel already, but like I'm sort of like left behind and
You
left
slowly
behind.
realize that you're getting pushed out of the
Mm-hmm.
society that you've been in your whole life. Like, you went through the schooling, you went through this, you had your friends, your family, and all of a sudden you like slowly are moving away from belonging. And that's
Right.
very scary.
Yeah. And then where do you land?
It's so interesting because I find myself like in the stage now with my friends who aren't married, like I find them pushing me away. And I still obviously like love them. Nothing's changed for me and just want to be with them or be their friend or hang out. And like I actually sometimes get a little hurt. Like, why are they not responding to me? And obviously I
Hmm.
know that they're going through whatever they're going through. And when
Yeah.
you're talking about this
Yeah.
belonging, I find it such an interesting contradiction because like the, people may feel like they're being pushed out of the society and this lack of belonging and a lack of a sense of connection. But me, as someone who's married and has friends who are single, I find myself trying to connect with them and not feeling them responding back.
It's
Hmm.
so interesting because I actually like before I moved everything into this community, like I had some videos on YouTube about topics like this. Now I strictly have it within my community, but I made two videos. One, what I wish my single friends knew, and what I wish my married friends knew, just to like show like how can we connect and how can we bridge the gap that like the single girls are like, oh, you don't get me, like I have to push myself away because you're probably looking down on me or whatever the feelings are, and then the married women are like, well, I'm trying to connect to you, and also I have these new challenges and new struggles that I'm dealing with. I mean, like adjusting to marriage right away in that first year and even having your first child, like these things are so major. And the married woman who's friends with a single woman would feel a lot of times like that you don't care about me and the struggles that I'm going through because you think that I'm just so lucky to be married that like there's nothing else we can talk about. It's like, well, you're married, so whatever challenges you have to deal with, like you're still so lucky. And I think that that's also something that I realized is going on in like the single journey where it's like self-closing. Like you're saying, you're closing yourself off to connecting to people because you feel like they don't get you and you're missing out on the just human experience of connecting and how we all go through challenges. And yes, I'm not struggling with trying to get married now because I'm married, but I have other challenges that I want to talk to you about, that I want to bond with you about and
Hmm.
have these friendships. And it's a shame to just like say that because of this thing that's going to divide, that's going to put us on like two different camps, two
Hmm.
different teams.
Yeah, I think that like really brings me to the question of like how much is from life connected to marriage and family? And if you don't have that, then do you have common grounds with others?
What do you mean?
So what I mean by that is like let's say like the singles are saying we don't connect to the marrieds, or the married saying well now we can't connect to the singles, and so there's this like push and pull of saying well we used to be friends, like we used to like sit on the bus together and go to school and we spoke about seminary and we spoke about like friendships, but now we don't necessarily have common grounds of what to speak about, and if so much of from life is surrounding marriage, for those that don't have it, is there then not material of what they can connect over? Like if I would like sit in shul in conversations, like what is it mostly about? Like the simchas that people are making, like what their kids did that week, like who got engaged, like who's dating and needs a shidduch, like all of those things like really revolve around like marriage, dating, children. Like that's like the top three things. Okay, maybe Botox also, but those are like the top few things that people are talking about, right?
Right.
And so like if somebody doesn't have a seat at the table in that, like automatically, like I guess like I want to like talk about like systemically how there might be an automatic pull away, like rather than like, oh, I'm feeling that there's a pull away. And like, then we can say, oh, it's your perception and it's not the reality. But like
Right.
maybe systemically, like there really isn't a place for
That's
those.
definitely the reality as well. I'm not that's yeah, for sure that's a good point. It's not just the feeling of being pushed away. You are being pushed away, and like you're saying there's so many the topics that people speak about and the things that people care about are very much like marriage and family. And if you're not in that, you automatically are not going to have too much to add to the conversation, and
Mhm.
people will start to it just happens. People start to value, your opinion less because it just doesn't have a place in what they're society like what their reality is. So it's hard to, and I think that's like what needs to change is that people need to relate as people need to just have friendships like you're saying with your single friends and just like connect because you're people and connect over the challenges and be willing to put yourselves in each other's shoes and
Mhm.
to not make some idea be like the thing.
Barrier.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Why is everybody pushing, right? You need to go to seminary, you need to get married, you need to date, you're the blame, you're the blame. It's because something about having people not married scares people. Now, on an altruistic level, we can say it's because people want the best for people and they value family and love and life, but like
They do. Right. I'm ready rolling
you're
my
like,
eyes.
yeah. Like I'm saying on that level, we could say like that's the reason, right? That's why a parent is pushing a child to get married because they think that that's the best track,
Right.
I do think
right?
ultimately that's true. Yeah, that people do.
I find personally like the pressure of like girls getting married at like the second they come home from seminary is very like it's very high strung. Like I don't think that's necessarily. I don't think someone at the age of 17 or 18 or 19 needs to be their first focus when they finish seminary. It's like, okay, how am I going to get married and all that pressure? I don't think it helps people make the right decisions and make the right choices in dating or in marriage.
That is such a fabulous like point and so fascinating. Like I'm still like thinking
Right. I'm
about
like,
it.
what's your face?
It's
I'm like, you have a face right now? Is it like you're
She's
hating everything that
processing.
I'm
no,
saying? Or you're
I'm like
like, okay,
processing.
score. No, because I think single people scare society. I
They
mean,
do. You're so right, and that's a bold statement, but you're right. I have to
Yeah.
agree because I think that to me, when I look at that, the way I understand that fear is like, if you have time to be yourself, to explore,
What are you
you
gonna
can,
choose?
yeah, where are you going to go
Mhm.
with this? And how can I'm
Let's
not
get
going to
you
be able
in
to
the
keep
box as
you.
fast as
I gotta
possible.
like, like
Hold you
make
in
Right.
sure you
place.
stay
Because
right
as you guys
here.
were,
But
and I
it's like,
wonder if a
there's,
lot of the moments of torture is coming because of society's messages and what society's saying. And if you knew that there was like in this I'm just wondering, and it could be totally not. If there's just like this acceptance of this, like, take as long as you need, explore yourself, decide what you want. You're about to make the biggest decision of your life.
Mhm.
There's no right or wrong time, and just like this inner acceptance of everyone at their different stages, would that have changed your experience?
100%, but it wouldn't have changed the full thing. Because I think that, like we're talking about, it's not even about people's opinions or perceptions and saying, like, oh, take your time, or like, because I didn't have so much outside pressure. Like, I know people, like, their parents are like down their back. Like, my parents were like, of course, we would love for you, but like, it's not happening. It's up to Hashem. Like, no one really, at least in my close, immediate society, yes, but my close, immediate, like, friends and family, no one was saying, like, something's really wrong, or like you have to get married right away, or like why this is so crazy that this is not happening. Like they weren't putting that insane pressure on me, but I didn't feel the pressure. I just wanted it. But like you're saying, part of the wanting is definitely related to the fact that I knew that without it, I'm never just going to fully be embraced by society, and I'm never going to fully like just be able to connect and like come back to a place of belonging, because
Mhm.
the more I was in the single world, like the more I was being felt that pushing out basically.
Mhm. I think it's like wanting something so much, but knowing that you can't get it because it's out of your control. And I think
Yeah.
like that's the struggle of like it's one thing if someone says like, listen, I don't want to get married anyways. So then I think like
Mhm.
that
Right.
stage for
I think
them is
that's
sort
what
of like much easier. Like, but like when you want something so badly and then the world says no, and they don't only say no, they say it's your fault that you don't have it. I think that's
yeah.
the hardest because like it's assumed that you're not doing enough to get it because if you were, you would be married by now. And that's a complete falsity. And I want to go back like because I think like we got into something like really good before about like why is it so scary
For
for
society to see
society
Mhm.
to
single.
see single people because I think like it is scary for individuals who are single to go through it because they feel like when is this going to happen, like I'm going to be stuck until this happens for me because I think like that's how we view singlehood of like it's just
Mhm.
like this like waiting period of like
Right.
you wait and then eventually you can start establishing your life when you're married, but like up until then like
Yeah.
it's like don't buy furniture for your house because like you
Right.
might be moving or
Right.
like
And people do
Right.
think that way. Like, don't go to, like, I hear all the time, like, oh, yeah, I would love to, go to OT school, but I'm going to go for something easier because maybe I'm going to get married. I'm going to move to Israel and da 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 da. So
Right.
people
And like
are
stop
really
making
like,
decisions based on what you think might or might not happen, because again, not in your control, and it's a shame for you to not be living your life to the fullest every single day of your life. Like
yeah.
why? If I would have known I would get married at 27, like how different I would have
Yeah.
lived, and like what decisions I was pretty good actually on that end of like I traveled, I kind of like made whatever decisions I wanted based on where I was, because I said, you know what, I don't really know what's going to happen, so I'd rather just like truly live and say that like I don't have any regrets from these years. And
Mhm.
I really don't. Like I look back and I had a lot of amazing times, and the pain that I went through definitely was a lot, and it shaped who I became, and it shaped like it really affected the way my relationship with Hashem and my Amuna, and that push and pull of like getting closer to Hashem, feeling angry at Hashem. I mean, like there was so much that went on.
If we can go into a little bit of like the relationship with Hashem, like I think that comes up a lot. Like what I see with clients is like as they're going through this, like they kind of feel like trapped. Where then the relationship is like davening becomes like a vending machine of okay, if I daven enough and I say Shira Shirim and I go to the kosel for 40 days, then my shidduch is gonna come, or then I'm gonna find the right guy. And like it doesn't work always, and sometimes it doesn't, sometimes it doesn't. And it's almost like davening becomes correlated so closely with getting what you want, and then they start like getting resentful towards the society or towards the
Yeah.
community, towards themselves, but also towards Hashem, and saying like,
Mhm.
I davened, I'm dressing properly, like I'm
Mhm.
doing everything that I'm supposed to be doing. Like, why isn't this happening? And I think like we reinforce that of saying like, okay, just daven more, like it's the only thing that you can do, or like
yeah,
join this Tehillim group.
People would say those kinds of things to me, like daven more, whatever, and I always just said like, no, not that I don't want to daven more, but I'm saying that is not the thing. Like you act as if I daven more, it's going to happen, and I know that that is not how life works, and that's not how Hashem works. Because davening should be for you; it shouldn't be to gain something. So obviously, it can't be. And I know people who are, back then when I was 21, I thought 30. Now I'm 30, but I'm saying like I thought that 30 was so old. I was like, There are people who are 30 and they're like these Rebbitzins. They're davening every day. They're dressing so tznius and they're not married. What about those people? So you think like, what would you say to them? So
Mhm.
obviously it's not about that. It's I have to sit here as, of course I want to be my best self, but I have to just sit here and be who I am, whether that's davening or, that day or not davening that day or dressing however. I just have to be strengthen my actual relationship with
Mhm.
Hashem and like really foster like my emunah and bitachon and believing that I am where I'm meant to be and that this life that I'm living, like I'm a soul here in this world to do the best I can with the circumstances I have, whether that's being single, whether that's being, married, having one kid, having five kids. Like, I think that's something that as a society and as a community, we need to like get more into that mindset of like whatever we have is just in this temporary life for us to do our best with. There's no choice. Like, there's a lot of this is not up to us. A lot
Mhm.
of these life stages are not up to us. What can I do? I can like believe that I'm here for a reason, that I'm here for a purpose. I'm here to live that out as best I can with what was given to me.
Mhm. And to find meaning and purpose in that time period, and not to like focus too much on the waiting, to focus more on how can I be okay now until that
Exactly.
comes.
Because you're not waiting. You're living your every day of your life is just as
Right.
precious
Mhm.
as the next.
I think it's
There's
knowing that this is not like a stuck period or a waiting period, but this is part of your life. This is
Mhm.
part of
The
you.
journey.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you don't fully embrace it, it's just such a shame because
And
like
you're wasting these
yeah, then
years.
you really are waiting. And it's like why would you want to live your life waiting? It's like you don't deserve that. You deserve to really embrace every day of your life and to just live. And some people they're living in a different circumstance or living in a different situation, but if you can't have that or if you want that and it's not happening, that's irrelevant to the fact that you have to take your day and your life and make it the most meaningful to you today.
Mhm. Yeah, I think, I wonder if we can like talk a little bit about like what opportunities like people can tap into to get through it, because on the one hand like there's this waiting phase of, we're waiting, when is it coming? But on the other hand, like we're talking about like take advantage of that time. Like I remember for me, like I always used to say like, okay, like I love that I don't have to wear a shazel and I can feel the wind blowing through my hair. Like that was just like
Yes.
exciting. Or that I could just like go out with friends whenever I want with no responsibilities and, spend my
Right.
paycheck how I want to spend it. Like there were certain like benefits at that point, and sometimes now I'm just like, like okay, when are those girls trips coming back?
I
Like
know,
I think I
right?
could
It's
revisit
hard
that.
though because when you're in it, like that's something that when people would say to me, it was hard because like they would say, "Oh, enjoy the time while you
Yeah,
have it," and I'm just like, I am, and I'm still suffering.
yeah.
I am enjoying. I went backpacking. I went traveling. I did so much in my single life that I loved. I put out my music. I mean, I feel like I really used the time that I had to do everything that I dreamed of doing,
Hmm.
and still, I was suffering
Yeah.
the fact that I was single and that I wasn't finding, my partner, whether it was like society based or just in general. I've always been the kind of person since I was little, I was like excited to get married.
On the one hand, like if those that are single like are developed in a ways like simple things like, do they go traveling? Do they go on to book clubs?
Hmm.
Like, or do they have hobbies like, or
More
things that they enjoy?
cultured, more worldly. It just
Right.
usually happens when you're single because you're
Have
living life.
space.
Yeah. And then when you're married and have children, life is just takes up so much of your time. It's
Yeah.
just automatic that there's going to be that personal development growth is going to be a little bit slower.
Right. And maybe that's what we were speaking about earlier of like what's the risk of people being single, and why do we like have to keep them like in that same
Right.
trajectory of like,
Hmm.
if they become too worldly, like will they then take the next steps that we want them to take?
Right. Because they might choose differently.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
And that choice is so scary. I think a product of feeling so stuck and feeling so trapped and of that self doubt and of that self blame is that it leads to either depression or anxiety more so. And I think like we always have to bring in social factors of like depression is on the one hand, it's chemical based.
Right.
But on the other hand, like depression sometimes comes from life
Situations.
circumstances.
Yes.
And I think that this is one of those things that can be a push into depression when somebody feels like constantly like I'm running in the rat race of life, but it's not running in the direction that I want it to go in. So
Yeah.
now I'm just stuck. And when life tells me I'm stuck, what do I do? Like I just feel down.
Right.
And so I think like, if we can start talking about if someone finds themselves in that situation, like what are some of the things that can be really helpful to get them through it? And, I think the first thing that comes to my mind is the importance of community.
Yeah. I was going to say the same thing because that's like one of the biggest pushes for me. That's why I wanted to create the community that I created because I think that if you have a place to belong and if you have a place to speak about like what you're going through and just to relate to people that are in your life stage and talk about personal development and your travels and all these other things that you want to talk about that sometimes with married women or mothers like they're not so in that space, so they would love to hear about your travels, but they're not going to be as like involved. They're not going to be like, oh yeah, I also just went last week to Thailand, like.
Mhm.
So to have a place to like speak to people that get it, I think is just so important, because that just like lets you,
Be-
okay, I like, we
Yeah.
can talk, we can hang out. Like, I don't have to be tiptoeing around everyone's married, established lives and feel like I'm the weird one that I just came back from a month-long trip. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like, you should be able to speak to people. I'm using that travel as an example, but you should be able to speak to people and feel that sense of community and belonging with people who are experiencing what you're experiencing. And already that, just the isolation, like, that helps with not feeling as lonely, I
Mhm.
think.
Yeah, I think also like something that comes up for people is like career wise. People many times when they're not married, they put much more into their career and they really get to go far. And then sometimes it's I feel like by society it's looked down.
Mhm.
Like, oh, you're doing all this because you're not married.
Right.
I
But
think
when you
I
get
think
married,
I think the career is looked down, but I also think the hobbies and the travel and all of that is also looked down of like, oh, you have so much free time, you can go wherever you want, and like
Right.
you have
you
no
enjoy this now.
responsibilities. Like
Yeah.
it's sort of like in a
That's what I'm saying. Oh, that's what we
condescending.
were that's what we were talking about before, how like it's like, if you when people told
Oh, to use
me
this time
when
well,
people told
or
me,
you're so
use this time
lucky.
well, you're so lucky, enjoy the free time. Same thing when I was pregnant. People, enjoy your
Right.
sleep now. It's
Oh,
like always like, why do people feel like they need to tell you? It's like they're looking back, they're looking at their own lives and
They're
saying, I
remembering.
wish I had more
Right.
sleep now. So when I see someone who
right,
obviously gets more sleep than me, I'm just like, oh, like, I'm so jealous of you. So I'm saying, enjoy it. You're so lucky. Really,
right.
when you're in something and you're waiting for something, you are trying to enjoy the advantages, but to hear from someone who has what you want, for them to tell you, oh, enjoy those other little things that are happening that are great for you right now, but you're still missing the core thing that you want, it's very painful. And
Mhm.
it's like, don't tell me to enjoy. I am enjoying it. I am going for my career. I am traveling. I am doing what I want to do. And like I was saying before, it's still super painful. So
Mhm.
to hear from someone and just say, like, they're highlighting the one good thing, or like that you're dealing with, and saying, oh, enjoy it, you're so lucky.
Right.
It's
It's
just
even
like,
said with like a sense of envy, like, and that's what always
Right.
like
yeah.
bothers me. Like, I'm gonna make like a public announcement here, just in terms of that, because like so many times, like when I lived in Israel, people would say like, enjoy Israel. Like once you get to the real life in America, like it's so much
Right.
harder
It
in
happens with
America.
everything.
I got that comment every single
Right.
time,
It
and I
happens in
used
all
to like,
stages.
and at first it used to scare me of like, oh no, what's life in America like? So it has this like fear-inducing
Yeah.
piece of like, oh wait, so like in terms of like
Uh-huh.
what is
Same.
marriage
Yeah.
like? Maybe
Is
single
marriage
is
so
better.
bad that now I'm waiting to
Right.
get married, and now
Right,
you're telling me
I
it's
used to
not even that
wonder
fun?
that when
Like,
everyone's like,
Right.
"Oh, so fun, enjoy this time now." I'm like, "Wait,
Yeah,
exactly.
exactly.
yeah, the
Like, what am I
exact thing I'm
running to if
waiting for.
everyone's telling me like,
Yeah.
enjoy this
Right.
time now?"
It's very
I
confusing.
it's very confusing, and I think, like, afterwards, like, what I realized is, like, okay, maybe for them, that was their story, but that doesn't have to be
Yeah,
my story because, like, it
exactly.
happens to be, like, now that I live in America, it is so much more, like, fine here than
Right.
it was there, so it's like, I would never tell
They're
anybody.
projecting their experience onto
Exactly.
you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I think like, that first of all, like those people that are doing it, like just be aware of like what it is that's going on and like the fear that you're instilling and also like
Yeah.
the inaccuracy of it. Because
Mhm.
that just because it was your story and like you're like longing to like have the freedom of singlehood or you're like longing to have like, I don't know, the means to be able to like go out and do what you want. It's not necessarily the case for the person in front of you. Like
Yeah.
they might not feel that way.
Yeah. And by telling them that they should be appreciating it, it just adds fuel to the fire to what they're already experiencing. Because believe me, they're trying to appreciate what they have to appreciate, and they're still missing something that they
Yeah.
really want and suffering because of it. So for you
Right.
to say that is just like taking away their whole story, and just saying, like, just because you happen to have these advantages, like, you should like enjoy them.
Hmm.
So it's very like invalidating, basically.
I think like with like when we not to compare the like different packages and problems that people have, but if we were to like put all the life struggles that everybody like goes through, like I've seen those that are single say like being single isn't so bad comparatively. Like they sort of like
On the flip
minimize it,
side,
right? They
right?
sort of like minimize it of like
Right.
oh like all I need is a husband and then everything will be better.
Yeah.
And it's almost like it doesn't then give them permission to really feel how painful it is to be single and to want something and not have it.
Yeah.
And I think like from those that are not single and like looking at those that are to like have more empathy towards it, but also those that are going through it, I think they have to like remind themselves like this is not a simple struggle. Like it's not just like okay, get a husband and everything is amazing. Like there's such deep pain that comes with that life stage and with that struggle that it
Yeah.
needs to be acknowledged for themselves.
Yeah. I was just talking to someone on this past Shabbos who got married at 32. Now she has 3 kids and she's happily married. But she was saying, no matter what she's been through in the past 10 years or whatever, of like marriage and raising kids and just life happening and those challenges, there's nothing in the world that was harder than going through what you went through. And so, like, just to validate anyone who's single and going through that, like, it's no matter what the challenges are, yes, there are people have to realize that there's full packages to life and that life doesn't stop when you
Yeah.
get married and all that. And there's going to be more challenges down the road. So, not to totally have your be all, like, end all be all, whatever that phrase is, of marriage, but really that it is very hard. And some people consider that, I think now would consider that the most painful, like the most pain I've ever experienced, or that time period being the worst time of my life. And not because I didn't have amazing times and amazing memories, but like the pain that I went through and the, like you were saying, leading into like a lot of mental health struggles, like that part of my life is something I've suffered the most in those few years, no doubt, like
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, and I think, a lot of people would say that. And, I would agree with that too. Like, even though my experience was like such a short period of time, like comparatively, like I think that was the most painful time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, also in terms of like finding like ways to manage it, like so we said like community is important, and also just like finding hobbies, like finding outlets and like things to keep you like connected to those. Um are there other like tips of what can be helpful, like especially like with friendships, let's say, because you could have a group of friends, but every month or so your friend group might be redefined because your roommate is getting married or your friend is getting married, and it's like, okay, they're in the engagement stage and they're in the marriage stage and you're still back
Right.
in
Well,
that
on
single
that note, I
stage.
would go back to what we were talking about earlier on connecting to people from a much more real place of like who they are, because I found that the friends that I've made, whether they got married before me or after me in the timeline, if I made friends with someone that was like we were our souls and hearts were connected. We were close. It wasn't circumstantial like in your college friends. It wasn't like that. It was really for the core of who you are. That is just a much stronger friendship that can outlast the differences and stages because you're still connected at the core. And so I think that's something to look out for when you're single, to really try and like develop friendships with people that are real and that are meaningful. And I know it's easy to gravitate like, oh, let's just hang out with these acquaintances because they're single and they're doing fun things. But, and not that you shouldn't do that, but to make sure that you're putting yourself in a position like in a community or in a group or in find something where you can really form strong connections with people that don't have to be defined by your life stage, because
Hmm.
although it's nice to relate to people, you also just want to create enough meaning in a friendship that it could sustain whatever life throws at you.
Yeah, and really showing up, right? It's so hard to like make plans in the moment where it's like, oh, I'm too tired and
Hmm.
maybe I'm not going to like it, or what if it's, uncomfortable. But if you put yourself in that situation, like, and you push yourself to go, like, it's more likely that you'll feel good afterwards.
Yeah, for sure.
I wonder if like being real with people what you're going through.
Hmm.
And I know that's so hard to do.
I
Like
think it's
that's a
so
big
hard
one.
because there's also like the fear of like, if someone knows this about me, will they then think I'm not marriageable? Like, if someone knows that I'm going through pain now, or if someone knows that I'm lonely,
Right, how or someone
like,
knows
is
how
that
much
gonna,
this is
right?
affecting me, does that, like, lower me even more?
Right.
Because 'Cause
Yeah,
I'm already
And it's
feeling low.
always,
Yeah.
yeah,
whenever we share our stories, and especially stories of pain, we always have to be mindful of who we're sharing it to. We have to make sure we're sharing it to someone who's like worthy of hearing our story.
Yeah.
But finding those people, they're able to like authentically share what you're going through, whether it's like family members, whether it's friends who are single with you or married friends from other communities, and just knowing that people can meet you and know what's
hmm,
going on, it can lead you to feeling that more sense of like community and belonging.
yeah, and
Yeah.
having that support.
I was definitely selective with the
Mm.
people that I shared my real, feelings,
Yeah.
and I think that again that leads to like which connection am I forming connections in my life that are real and strong enough to withstand true brutal honesty. And
Right.
that's what I love even about, let's say, my coaching community. It's like I tell people you could be anonymous if you want, like no one will know if you write your name as like Khani whatever, no one will know because like you can just sign up and put a random name, or you can totally own and be fully yourself, and everyone chooses something different. But if you can authentically and really speak honestly and make those connections that are really real, you're just going to be and like better off because you will have a place to really rest yourself and to
Hmm.
just be, as opposed to like always trying to like put on some kind of front that things are not as hard as they are, not as bad as they are, because you want to save face and like at least hold some level of pride amongst a situation that already feels like it's putting you down just
Hmm.
by default.
I think like it amazes me how valuable connection is. Like that's what we really keep coming back to is like
Yeah.
connect and be vulnerable and be open and have people who support you and have people who won't judge you. It's almost like connection is just something that can get you through this life stage, and it's just a matter of like what you are connecting to, and it's still going to be painful and it's still going to be hard,
Yeah.
but these are some of the things that can ease it up a bit, to have real authentic conversations with friends, to have real connection.
Yeah, and two other things that came to mind. I just remembered what I was going to say before. A couple of things when you were saying like what else, like what can people do to help them get through? Like when I look back, some of the things that I know have helped me the most and like almost feel like I wouldn't have survived without them was number one, like having the right mentors, rabbis, coaches, therapists, all the people like support because there was a rabbi that I met in Neve that I'm still close to today, and I still ask all my questions today, and they're all very different like over those, I don't know, 9 years. But I would not have. There were times in my life that I remember in my single years feeling like if I had never met him and didn't have a place to ask these questions to and to share this pain and vulnerability and how it relates to Torah and Amuna and everything and all these philosophical and pretty philosophical, so those questions really tied into my pain. Like, if I didn't have a place to ask that, I would crumble. Like, I feel like that was holding me together at stages when I just really needed someone to totally say, "I see you, I hear you, there's
Hmm.
nothing wrong with you, Hashem loves you." Like, I know it feels impossible and it feels untrue, but, like, it's so, so, so important. And, like, that really ties into the next thing that I wanna bring up, which is Amuna. And I know it's, like, hard to hear when you're in it, and it's like, "Oh, have Amuna." Like, I'm really saying from the core of who I am, really, really strengthening your connection to Hashem and saying, like I was saying earlier, like really putting yourself in that position of saying, like, I'm here and I'm going to accept whatever my life is. It's so hard because you want something and you can't get it, or you're trying to get it and you don't know if it's going to come. If I don't know if it's going to come, I told myself, like, if I'm going to be single, there's no guarantees. If I'm going to be single my
Right.
whole life, so does that mean I'm going to stop being from, like, how do I understand like my connection to Torah and my connection to Hashem as a person in this life, no matter what my circumstances are. And if I can get to a place where I feel strong enough that I love Judaism and I love my from life, and I believe that my soul is going to get whatever circumstance it needs to refine it to be the place, like, to fulfill its purpose. I'm just going to sit here and say I never had control anyway. I'm just going to like let you like run my life and say, like, it's really up to you. It's not up to me. And the more that I surrender to that, there is such, I remember that shift. I remember because I wrote a song called I Still Have You. And I was talking about Hashem. And I remember the shift in me that happened that day onward. It was like, it's a weird thing that, like, I remember something turned in me. And I felt that, like, relief and acceptance of, like, I don't really know what's gonna happen. I don't really know if I could, like, I can't control what's gonna happen, but I am here, put in this world to be here and to do my best with whatever I have. And so every day I'm gonna wake up and say, single, married, children, no. It's like these are pieces of society and parts of our, short temporary life on this earth. And I'm gonna sit here and say my soul is eternal, and I'm just gonna like embody who I truly am and do my best with whatever. And that's what I'm going to commit to because there's nothing else I can do.
Yeah,
So it's like
wow.
sad and also
It,
comforting.
it's so
Surrendering to a higher
Yeah,
power,
surrendering.
surrendering to
Yeah.
Hashem, and yeah,
right.
and knowing our place, knowing that we what we can't control. And once you kind of give up that level of control and
Yeah.
acceptance of where we're at, like we
Mhm.
always say, Shira and I, like once you accept, that's when the change happens.
Yeah. And that's when you realize your value doesn't come from your circumstances, and your value comes from you, like, putting in that effort to be your full self and to be what, fulfill your purpose and whatever is in your control. And like that, your value doesn't diminish from any outside factors. And that core strength really, really carried me through. At that point, when that shift happened, I felt like I was like 24 or so. Um, so, yeah, I think that that was one of the biggest things looking back that really helped me and changed the way I related to Hashem, the way I related to the world, the way I saw my future. Because before then, I had to either say, when I look at my future, I either see myself getting married next year, the next year, what if I get married at 30? What's it going to look what if I just say, I don't know what my future is going to look like. I'm here today. I'm doing my best today. I'm here in this world for a reason. I'm just as valuable as everyone else. There's nothing wrong with me, going back to that. And I'm just going to surrender. and accept what Hashem wants for me, because that's all I could do.
Yeah, so that was really powerful.
Thanks.
And I think that you guys covered like a lot of important points. I mean, it was really, I really appreciated you sharing like your personal story and the community that you created to help people through that.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm definitely very passionate about it, and I work with one-on-one clients as well. Really anyone in any life stage, but I feel extremely passionate, and like I really understand the single journey very well, and so yeah,
Mhm.
I'm very passionate
That's
about
great.
helping singles specifically.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Nechama, for joining us today. Like, this was such an interesting but also helpful conversation, and I really believe that a lot of people are going to connect with it, and definitely like just the community that you've created. I think many people can really benefit from that, and we'll put a link to it in the
Amazing.
podcast, so
Yeah.
anybody who would like to join can definitely go look and can look and join.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah,
Okay,
thank
Yeah.
you so
great.
much for
Thank
having
you.
me. This
Thank
was
you.
so nice.
Yes.